Hello, everyone, and welcome to our series on Edpuzzle, where today we're looking at social studies class and how you can supercharge your classroom teaching with Edpuzzle. Now, with everything that's going on, you might be wondering, why should I start using videos with my students? Well, as a former teacher myself, I can attest that when you start using Edpuzzle videos with your class, it's going to give you superpowers. When students watch a video lesson, they're able to learn content in an engaging visual way. But even better, they're able to learn at their own pace. We as teachers know that some students move faster and some students move slower. But those differences shouldn't determine whether or not a student's successful. With video lessons, students can watch, pause, and rewatch content as many times as they need to be successful. However, if you've ever tried using videos before, you know one of the biggest challenges is accountability, knowing who watched your video and who didn't. This is where Edpuzzle comes in and gives you the tools you need to hold every student accountable. Finally, by embedding interactive questions into your videos, you can shift learning from being passive into being active, which we know leads to higher student engagement and deeper learning. So all this put together means that Edpuzzle is going to be a game changer for you and your students, regardless of what your learning scenario looks like for this upcoming year. Using video lessons in your classroom empowers you to deliver amazing lessons, whether you're in class with students or not. And I am so excited to be able to show you how Edpuzzle can fit into your social studies class. And we're going to start by talking about what makes a great social studies lesson. Now, I'm going to guess that this slide looks fairly familiar because this is probably what you're already doing most days in class. You start your lessons by introducing students to the content they're learning, and then you let them practice or engage. Your time as a teacher is spent giving individualized feedback, leading discussions, and engaging students in debate so they can develop that higher order thinking. Edpuzzle fits into the first piece of this. Use video lessons to introduce students to the content they're learning. If you want to get really creative, you could even use videos to help students practice. But the main idea is that you as a teacher no longer spend your time lecturing. And because you're not lecturing, you have so much more time and capacity to work with small groups or students on an individual level and give them that personal support that can really drive their learning. But rather than listening to me talk about this anymore, I want to show you exactly what you need to do to get started. Using videos in your class is not something that takes hours, days, or weeks to get started with. It's something you can do right now. The easiest way is to start by using existing videos and repurpose them for your class. It's so easy to find an amazing existing video, spend a couple minutes adding questions, and add a few notes to personalize it for your class, and you end up with an amazing video lesson for your students. Now, there are lots of different ways videos could fit into class, but I think by far the best is use the videos to teach the content. Social studies is such a content-heavy subject that it's easy for class time to get bogged down trying to get through it all. If instead you accomplish that through video, you will have so much more time for higher order activities, whether it's debates, projects, or student-to-student collaboration. And so let me show you just how easy it is to take an existing video and turn it into an amazing social studies lesson. So I'm going to flip you over to my screen. And here I am on Edpuzzle. And there are lots of different ways I could find a video. I could search in our main search bar on YouTube. But honestly, I think for social studies, our Crash Course channel is the best place to go. Crash Course makes videos that cover really every social studies topic you could imagine. And students always find the videos really engaging and effective. So let's say I'm teaching a unit on the Civil War. We'll do that search, here are a bunch of results. And let's start off with this first video. I know this video does a good job introducing students to the Civil War and the causes that led to the start of the Civil War. But now, no matter how engaging this video is, if I assign it like this, students aren't really going to master the content. To turn this video into a full lesson, I need to head over and edit it with Edpuzzle. So we'll start editing. And the first thing I might want to do for a crash course video is cut out a piece of it, because their videos can be pretty long, especially if you work with younger students or just want a shorter assignment. But for today, we're going to leave it. We're just going to head over to the questions tab. This is where we can make a big difference. One tip I tell teachers is start every video with an audio note. This lets you say hi to your students, introduce what they're about to watch and why they're watching it, as well as set expectations for what they should be doing. Good morning, everyone. In our small groups today, we're going to be having a debate on what led to the start of the Civil War. To help you prepare, I want you to watch this video, which will cover all of the facts and details you'll need. Your goal is to keep track of all of the different events that led to the start of the war and understand how they worked off and built off each other. Now, this video moves a bit fast at points, and there's a lot of information. So make sure you have your notebook open and don't be afraid to pause and rewind as much as you need. So enjoy, and I look forward to talking with you soon. Great. Just like that, we've embedded a 30-second note, and this is really going to change how students engage with this video. First, by hearing your voice, it's going to add a personal touch, which gives the video a sense of purpose. You've also laid out why students are watching this so that they can be prepared for the debate they're having in small groups in class at a later point, so they understand the why. Videos like these are often super engaging, whether it's this video or a documentary, but if you don't set that expectation of what students need to get out of it, often it's engaging and fun, but they don't remember everything they need to. Now, another way we can help make sure students remember all of the key facts of this video is by embedding questions. We know students really commit ideas to long-term memory when they have to practice recalling the information on their own. And so let's say that this part of the video, maybe we're talking about the Missouri Compromise and how it led to conflict. So we're going to go ahead and embed a multiple choice question, and we'll just ask, which of these is the best description of the Missouri Compromise? And so there, we're going to force students to slow down, really process what they just heard, and identify the correct answer. And so getting them to practice that recall will solidify their learning. Now, the other way I like to help them practice recall is actually doing it on a bit of a delay. So rather than asking them right after information is presented, we could also ask them at a later point in the video. So here we were talking about the Missouri Compromise, but let's actually fast forward, maybe just a couple minutes, maybe even closer towards the very end of the video, but we can embed a question after the fact and force students to think back to what they heard. So let's go ahead and embed an open-ended one this time. And let's tell students to rewind, to reflect, and in your own words, describe what the Missouri Compromise is. So here we force them to stop and really think back to what they heard 5 or 6 minutes ago and articulate that understanding. Now, you can also help students out. Oftentimes they will have forgot, so they'll have to rewind and watch again. So I might put in a hint like, hey, go back to 3:30 in the video if you don't remember, so you can watch it again. That way, students have a resource if they need it. But I can save that in and give students that chance to pause, reflect, and really recall that information on a delay. Now, for the sake of your time, I'm not going to go through and embed all of the questions that I would put into this video. We're just going to leave it here. But I do want to go over best practices for the end of the video. So right at the very end, in the last couple seconds, there are a couple things I do. First, I embed some open-ended questions. The first one I'll embed here: do you have any questions about the start of the Civil War? So I make an open-ended space for students to ask me questions, let me know what they're curious about, what they're confused about, what they need more support in. I'll embed another open-ended question and ask students about how confident do you feel in explaining the events that led to the start of the Civil War. And so this can give me a sense beyond just whether they got questions right or wrong in the video, but of how confident students are feeling. Now, these are simple. These take maybe 10 seconds for you to type out, but the insights you gain are so valuable as a teacher. Understanding how your students are feeling, what they're confused about, where they want a little more clarity from you can be a game changer. The other thing I make sure to do in every video is have clear directions for what comes next. So students have finished this video, now what? Well, I'm going to do that by embedding a note into this video. So I'll add a note, and my preference is always for audio notes so students hear my voice. So let's add one in right now. Nice work. You finished the video, and my expectation is now you've taken notes on the key events that led to the start of the Civil War. As I mentioned before, we'll be debating in small groups this afternoon. So the next thing I want you to do is write a reflection, 3 paragraphs, where each paragraph is a different event that led to the war and why you think it was so important. Now, the exact directions are on your Google Classroom page. So head over there and work hard on your reflection because we'll be using it in our discussion later. So just like that, I'll end my note. I can save that into the video. And now students know exactly what to do. They're going to head to Google Classroom. They're going to read through those directions, start their reflection so they can come into our small group time or our class time prepared to work and start applying what they learned on a higher level. And so that's really it. It's taken us just a handful of minutes here, and we've transformed this fun and engaging video, but one that wasn't necessarily going to result in learning, into a really complete lesson where students know what to do, why they're doing it, and how they can be successful. And that's just how simple it is to use an existing video in your lessons. We found the video, added a couple questions, added those notes for personalization, and we ended up with a full lesson that we could give to our students. Now, the reality is there are so many quality social studies resources, but sometimes nothing fits quite as well into what you're teaching in class than a video that you've created yourself. And so sometimes you might want to build your own video lesson for your students. Luckily, building your own video is simple. You can just record your screen. If you want, you could use a document camera. It doesn't take any fancy tech or fancy tools. And you teach just like you're teaching a lesson live. So you present information, you ask students questions, because with an Edpuzzle video, you can actually give them those questions in the video. And so I want to show you just how simple it can be to take a lesson you were going to teach live and turn it into a video lesson that you can assign to your students. So let me flip you over, and here we go. Here is a Google Slides that I'm going to teach my students on the different forms of government. And you can tell this looks pretty much just like a Google Slides I would use for a lesson I was going to give in class. It's formatted probably like things you've put on your projector before. So the gist of this lesson is we're going to introduce students to the main ideas. We're going to start by having them reflect on what they already know about government, maybe from a lesson yesterday that we talked about. Now, after that, we're going to start diving into the new content. So we'll review and then dive into the main content, the different forms. So democracy, monarchies, dictatorships, etc. In a real lesson, I would then spend some time explaining, hey, here's what a democracy is. But then I'd want to give students a chance to process that information. So maybe I'd ask them, based on what you know, why are elections important in a democracy? And I'd have them do a turn and talk, or I'd call on a few students. Then after we share, we'd go over why elections are so important. It's how the public participates in the government process, etc. And then we could go through the other examples. And so it's pretty simple. It's really just like a lesson I might teach in class. And all we have to do is turn it to a video. So I have this app downloaded, Screencastify. I like it. It's a simple app. It just lets me record my screen. You can use any screen recorder you know of or you're familiar, though. It doesn't have to be this one. But I'm just going to click record. And let's dive right into this presentation. Let me full screen it. Great. All right. Good morning, class. Today, we're going to be continuing our discussion on government. And so I want you to think back to our lesson yesterday and reflect. What is a government? Write 2 or 3 sentences explaining what a government is from our lesson yesterday. Well, if you remember, Yesterday, we learned that government is a system of social control, etc., etc., etc. We'd review the content from yesterday. Now, today we're talking more about government, and specifically, we're talking about the different forms that government can take: democracy, monarchies, theocracies, dictatorships, and transitional governments. So let's start by talking about democracy. In a democracy, here's what it is. I'd explain it all, and then I'd say, alrighty, based on what you just learned, I want you to describe why elections are important for a democracy. So write 3 to 4 sentences explaining your thinking, and don't be afraid to replay the video if you need. So notice how I pause, because I'm actually going to embed a question right here. Then I'll say, well, remember, in democracy, supreme power is given to the people. So elections are critical because it is the mechanism for how people contribute to their government. It is essential in democracies to have elections so that people can voice and contribute to the governmental process. And then we could dive in to our next topic. So now let's talk about monarchies. I'd explain what a monarchy is, and then I could move on and ask them a question to process what they've learned. And then we discuss how they should have thought about the question. We go through all of the examples together: theocracy, dictatorship, transitional governments, etc. And then we close out our lesson, and that's the end of this. So I'm going to go ahead and come over to the left side. I'll pause this recording and click end. And this video is saved just like that, super simple. And so I hope you notice this wasn't that much different than a lesson I was going to teach live. I ask questions just like I would ask questions if I were teaching in front of my students. And now I'm going to upload this to Edpuzzle. Screencastify is nice because you can upload directly. But if you're using a different screen recorder, don't worry. Just download that video file. It can upload to Edpuzzle. No problems at all. And so now that it's uploaded, this video is just going to take a couple of minutes to process. And so to save time, I've actually gone ahead and pre-uploaded one of them myself, just so we can get started right now. So here's this video I uploaded earlier, and let me show you what I do with the editor. So I'm just going to head over to the questions tab. And what I do is I listen for the points in the lesson where I actually asked a question. So right at the beginning, you might remember I asked students the question to reflect on what they learned yesterday and write out, what is a government? So I'll embed that. It's an open-ended question. I'll ask students to write 2 to 3 sentences explaining what a government is. And so at that point in the video, they actually pause, actually have to think back to yesterday and respond. So we'll save that one. Let's keep moving. The next question I think that I asked was the one when we were talking about democracy. So I'd asked them to explain why, based on what they learned, elections are so important to a democracy. So let's go ahead right at that point where I ask it, I'll embed a question, and I'll prompt them to do a little bit more writing, maybe write 3 or 4 sentences explaining why elections are important to a democracy based on what was just discussed in the video. So again, I'm slowing students down, forcing them to pause, process, and reflect on what they're learning. And so we go through all of the different examples, and at each point where I would ask a question in class, I actually embed a question into the video. It lets students engage in a way that feels pretty similar to what they're used to doing in class. So they're going to be paying attention, taking notes, and responding to questions. That's all there is. And so that's it. That's how you build your own video lesson for Edpuzzle. Now I want to point out, we spent 5 or 6 minutes and we really did the bulk of the work. Besides building the PowerPoint, we did the bulk of recording the lesson, editing it with Edpuzzle. So this is not something that takes hours of preparation. If you have 15 or 20 minutes after work one day, if you've got a 15 or 20 minute planning period, that's enough time to build a video like this and have an amazing video resource like that ready for your students. Now, the last thing I want to talk about for today are data analytics. Data analytics are the thing that helps you as a teacher take advantage of all of the extra time that you're going to have now that you're using video lessons. The first thing you can do with data analytics is figure out who needs to be pulled in a small group for some more review. So who are those students who didn't score very well? You need to pull and give them a bit of extra support. Now, when you do pull small groups, You can identify specifically where students are struggling or specifically what their misconceptions are. You can see what questions they got correct, which questions they got incorrect, what their open-ended responses are, and use that to figure out where you need to best support them. You can also do this on a whole class scale. You can see if your whole class is ready for the next topic or unit, or if maybe they need another day or two here before moving on. And you can adapt your future instruction so that you're giving your entire class a best fit lesson every day. And now I truly believe that you have all of the knowledge you need to start using video lessons in your social studies class. When you start using Edpuzzle video lessons, it will open up so many possibilities for what you and your students can achieve. And so we are so excited to see what you can create, whether that's an existing video that you adapt for your class or a video that you create just for your students. We're so excited to see you and your students start taking advantage of Edpuzzle soon. And so good luck, enjoy.